Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Ms. Wellens, for your work on getting this bill together. I also want to really thank my colleagues, Councilmember Navarro, who worked with me at the beginning of this bill when I was introducing it and suggested some amendments, including the name change to the formal title of COVID-19 Renter Relief Act. So I appreciate that. Um, and uh, and limiting the scope of the bill so that we can focus on what this is a emergency temporary measure to protect renters right now from any potential rent increases. We know that many folks are struggling. We had a Office of Legislative Oversight report here recently of the 33% of Montgomery County residents who rent. We know that uh, many of our Black and Latino and white and Asian renters, anywhere from 40% to for white renters to 62% for Latino renters, are housing burden, meaning they pay in excess of 30%, a third of their income on housing. And so there, even before this crisis, many people were on the edge. Um, and we need to make sure that as we stay in our homes, rightly so, to minimize the health damages, and make sure we control this virus so that we can protect people's lives, we need to make sure we're making that as easy as possible. Obviously, we're also facing a huge economic crisis because we're staying at home. Many people have been laid off and furloughed. Many families have been impacted. Our renters disproportionately are already low income and vulnerable and rent burdened already. And so this bill will help by prohibiting rent increases during the crisis, and up to 30 days after, you cannot send a notice of a rent increase. Current law requires 90-day notice, so this would give 120 days after the state of emergency ends for people before rents can be increased. And any rent increase that would take effect during this crisis that had already been issued would need to be rescinded. I want to just say a couple things because there've been some, I think, misunderstandings or mischaracterizations about this bill. This is not an authorization to stop paying rent if you're able to pay rent. We are still encouraging you to reach out to your landlords and to your property owners let them know you're facing problems and try to work with them. You can also reach out to our Department of Housing and Community Affairs. This is not meant to be harmful to landlords. I've said before, and I'll say again, many of our landlords have been proactive in supporting their tenants and providing solutions during this time. But that is not universally the case. And we need to make sure that we're protecting everybody and everyone is extended that extremely important protection right now. Since we introduced this bill, we've gotten a number of additional complaints, over a dozen of people who are facing increases, some of which that have just been issued in this month, in the month of April. And we've directed them to DHCA, and I know others have received complaints. But I wanted to mention one in particular. I have several, but I want to mention one. Yes, just this week we received information from a woman who's a Montgomery County school teacher and lives in the county, and got a notice on April 1st that she was going to receive a 21% rent increase, taking her rent from $1,600 a month to over $2,000 a month. The letter that we saw and have in our possession was addressed to her and to all residents, which leads me to believe, and we've got information that other residents received at this particular building, the INIGO in North Bethesda, the Inigo, that they received these notices. So I just want to dispel the notion, while many of our landlords are doing the right thing, this is happening and continues to happen since we've introduced this bill, and we need to stop it because it's not the right thing to do, and it's really going to put our folks in a bad position. The thing that I stay up late at night and worry about in addition to this, and this bill's not going to solve all our problems. We're going to need to appropriate money like we've put in for rental assistance and $2 million for that. And I want to thank Councilmember Glass and Friedson and others who have been pushing that. But we're going to need to protect folks when this crisis is over. And we don't want rent and fees and fines and increases to stack up so much to the point where they can no longer pay, and that incentive starts to change from whether you try to keep that tenant and we don't see a ton of evictions on the back end. So we're going to need to work with our federal and state partners to get more money in from those entities so that we can help landlords, help tenants, and make sure we keep our housing stable. But this is one emergency measure that we need to take, in my view, right now, and we need to keep it at no increase for this short and temporary period. The bill will sunset. I think it's narrowly tailored in that way. And so I think we need to move forward. And the final thing I'll say is we've received many calls and testimony in favor of this bill. Just some of the organizations, Casa de Maryland, the Renters Alliance, individuals, the League of Women Voters, Jews United for Justice, the Montgomery County Housing Alliance, the Montgomery County Action Board. So this has broad support, and I would ask that we move forward and pass this bill as is, with the clarifying amendments, which I will be supporting, that Ms. Wellens mentioned, but also with my amendment which was the intention from the beginning. We didn't include it, but my amendment to restrict the imposition of fees, late fees, and fines, which is consistent with also holding rents at current levels. And the reason it wasn't in the base bill is because we had to check if we had the authority to do that, and that took a little longer. We do have the authority to do that. So that will be the amendment I will be offering. Mr. President, I'm happy to do that whenever is the appropriate time if you want to go in order. So I yield back. Thank you, Council President Katz. And I also want to thank my colleagues for their thoughtful consideration of this bill, and just my appreciation to the co-sponsors, Council President Katz, Council Member Rice, Council Member Navarro, for getting on board early and helping design and morph this and put in the work and give advice and guidance. I really appreciate everything that's gone into it. And I really want to say to a couple of people, I'm going to do it by first name, to Tessa, who's that Montgomery County public school teacher who wrote me, who on April 1st received an increase of 21%, more than $400 or about $360. That's not going to happen now. It's going to come down. I want to say to Betty, who received a 35% increase. That's not going to happen. I want to say to Dr. Bauman, his first name, 30% increase, not going to happen. And to the many others who have received increases and have written in, thank you specifically for trusting me to advocate on your behalf. I so associate myself with the remarks that Councilmember Navarro made about who we're here to advocate for and how we have to represent those voices. So your voices have been heard. This is going to be a historic action, and I'm really proud that we're going to be able to take it here. And I've already heard to my colleagues and to the public watching, Anne Arundel County and Howard County have already reached out to our office asking for this legislation so that they can take steps forward to do this in their counties. So I think once again, Montgomery County is going to lead the way and set a path forward that hopefully can help people in the whole state and maybe even further. So thank you very much, Mr. President. With that, I would like to move passage of the amended bill.